All right, everyone. It's Mark and Annette with Carrying the Load, and boy, we're excited today. We've had a fun week off.
We have had a fun week off, and it's been one that we needed a break. We needed some family time, and I needed some sunshine.
So we took the family and went down to St. George, Utah, and then went to Zion's National Park and Moab, and had some great time down there. But we're back and we're excited today because we have with us Carey Portell. And Carey has a unique story that we're going to be talking about in a second. But before we get into that, Annette and I have something exciting that we wanted to share with you with regards to kind of a little bit of a rebranding as to what we're doing with the name of this particular podcast.
What you're going to find is that our podcast is going to be called, the new channel, the new title of our show is Trail Angels. And Carey is the lucky one to be our first with the Trail Angel branding, powered by Carrying the Load. But what we have found, and we were talking with Carey with this a little bit before, is that people are confused at what a cairn is, the CAIRN, the stacked rocks that our listeners are familiar with because we talk about it so often in our followers. But others that are coming to find us are getting lost, and which plays right into trail angels and what a trail angel really is. And again, they are someone on the trail, on our journey, that will leave something for us. So it's so similar to a cairn. You're going to see the logo. It might get tweaked just a little bit, that icon, but it's there to help others recognize that they're not alone, that someone's been there before, and they truly are angels in our life.
Last year I went on a really fun hike in the Uinta Mountains in Utah with some friends. And while we were there, about 10 miles into our hike, our backpacking trip there, we found a little cache. And in that cache were 6 Dr. Peppers. And we were really excited to see that because we knew that someone had left it for us. And we were thirsty, and the water just wasn't going as far as we really wanted it to go. So that was a great refreshment for us at the time. And we believe that the trail angels that we're going to have on our show going forward are those that can bring the relief to many of our listeners who are struggling with issues in their own lives. And so, once again, Carey, you're the first person to be one of our new trail angels, and we're excited to have you with us today.
I'm happy to be the first one. Thank you.
You're special. I mean, you were special anyway, but you are really special now.
Let me share with our listeners, if I may, a little bit about you, and I really want you to fill in the blanks. There's a lot of your story that I think is very important. And the importance of the story is going to be more evident as we get into our podcast today. But Carey is an advocate against distracted driving, as well as being an advocate for farm safety. After surviving being hit by an impaired driver, Carey has become a public speaker regarding her recovery, the challenges that she endures, and how working as a disabled cattle farmer a speaker has given her purpose again. Now, there's a lot just in those couple of sentences that we talked about there as to what you're doing and the passions that you have there. You've been on a number of different types of speaking opportunities. You've been on different podcasts. I know that, one of my channels that I listen to and watch is RFD sometimes. And not a lot of people know what RFD is. It's all about farming.
I guessed. I may not have known, but I guessed it.
And I'm a little bit of a closet farmer myself. We own some property down in southeastern Utah, total John Wayne country. We love going down there. And so when I read your bio and I did a little bit of research, both of us were going back and forth. We recognize that you're one of our kind of people.
Oh, so, I love to hear that.
So I know that there's a lot there that I've missed. Maybe the best way we can start, Carey, is maybe just you sharing your story.
Sure. Yeah. It's, it's hard to put all of that in a nutshell, but basically it started 10 years ago in December was when all of this just randomly happened, that my 2 middle children and I were driving to a neighboring town after I had gotten off work, and just, out of the blue at 6:20 in the evening on a Wednesday, we were hit by a drunk driver. And, to think that something like that could happen on that day and time, that, it's not something that I was prepared for when I left the house that evening. I mean, not even remotely. So it took us a long time to recover. It was about 6 weeks, I guess, for my daughters to recover from their injuries. But it was a full 4 years before my doctors finally said, okay, we're just going to have to stop. There's nothing more that we can do right now except just let you heal and, maybe let you get back to living a little bit instead of just continuing to have all of these surgeries. And that's what it was like for 4 years, was just surgery after surgery and then heal. And it was like a limbo stage. I just wanted to move on and start living again. And I did have quite a few more surgeries after that 4 years, but there were times where I did get to feel that, hey, I just get to live during this time. I get to be a normal mom, wife, I guess new normal, if you would say, because nothing was normal like it used to be. But yeah, it was a pretty significant ordeal that we went through.
Yeah, I actually saw pictures of the pins that are in your ankles or in your hips there, and recognized that that wasn't just a quick injury that healed. You were in a wheelchair for 2 years.
Yeah. I full time pretty much for that first 2 years until I was able to walk on my own. And even after that, I continued to be a part-time wheelchair user. And I think more than anything, my determination to keep walking is the only reason why I am still walking. Because at this point, they told me, within 8 to 10 years, you will be full-time wheelchair. And I mean, I'm close. I take about 1,700 steps a day, which is not very much. And when you put cattle farmer in that title, I know people out there are going, okay, I don't understand this at all.
It really, I'm trying to envision you doing that as a cattle farmer. I mean, let alone how difficult it was to heal, to live again. I love that, part. You just needed to live. And even though you were in the middle of this journey, which had been, several years in doing the different surgeries and things, there's something to be said about living.
Absolutely.
Even in the midst of those challenges, we can find ways to live, which helps us have the hope, I believe, to continue on that journey and that next level that you had to go through and reach.
Yeah. If you don't have hope, there's nothing to reach for. So, and for me, I'm a very goal-oriented person. So I had to have something that I was working towards at all times. I am still like that, because if you stop working towards something, then that's whenever people basically give up, because there's nothing to look forward to. Right.
I was reading your bio and doing a little bit of research on your life there, and I'll be honest with you. The most important question I had for the day is, what's the difference between a cattle farmer and a cattle rancher?
Oh, the people out west will tell you the difference.
Wow.
Yeah. If you're a cattle rancher, that means you have thousands upon thousands of acres. That's what a rancher is. And I do not cross that line ever with ranchers, because it's very territorial. In Missouri, it's very hard to find even a few hundred acres all in one tract. So we're traditionally called cattle farmers.
Okay.
Well, thanks for clarifying that for me.
Well, and that makes sense. I'm thinking, okay, is she raising steers for meat, or is she doing the milking part? What part of that do you do? So that makes a lot of sense. But getting back to the question that Annette asked you a minute ago, I look at your life and the fact that you were able to go back to doing something that you enjoy versus acclimating to something that maybe you wouldn't have enjoyed as much. You could have probably sat down and had some kind of an office job, sitting in front of a computer, but that wasn't your passion.
Definitely not.
Would you say that it was that passion that drove you to being where you're at today?
I would say passion drives me in everything. That's just the kind of person that I am. I did try to go back to a normal job. Like I think 3 times I tried, and the level of pain that I have every day, it was not going to work. And again, I know I'm confusing people. They're thinking cattle farming. Okay. That is a very highly active, high energy type of career. But I had a lot of help from my physical therapist. And then I luckily got introduced to an organization through our agriculture extension, our university extension called Agriability, that also helped me figure out how to continue cattle farming with the level of injuries that I had. And the whole purpose, actually my physical therapist is the one who gave me the idea to just do cattle farming, because cattle farming is physical therapy. So he just taught me how to do things on the farm. And then I didn't have to actually go in and see him as many times a week, because he said, Carey, you've got all this stuff on your farm. You can just do it there, but just be careful. Basically, don't overdo it. And then I got to a point where my mind was still saying that I could do things that I did with my normal body, and my new body was not cooperating with what my mind said it could do. So then that's where Agriability came in, and they actually help people with all kinds of physical challenges on how to do things more ergonomically, or luckily in my case, there's special equipment that can help me.
I love the word ability here, because we all have challenges to degrees that changes our ability or how, we have to approach certain things. Just your daily living as a mom, you had to change things. Because how do you do that? Whether you have an autoimmune disease that people can't see it on the outside you look fine, but the inside, your body's wreaking havoc, and it limits the way that you do certain things. And so it comes down to, I believe you were given a great gift in a therapist who helped you to see things in a different way, that you would have that ability, and introducing you to an organization that helped you to even prolong that ability for a career.
Yes, absolutely. I was very fortunate that I got the physical therapist that I did. And I have never been a truly outspoken person or like a demanding person, but I was so terrified of anyone touching my legs at that point, because it would hurt if the fan blew air on my legs at that point. And I said, I want one physical therapist. I want the best that you have. And I don't want to deviate from that physical therapist, because I want them to know my situation forwards and backwards. And fortunately, they complied with me. I was so lucky. And I did at that point, I got the head of the physical therapy department. And later on, you get to be so close to your physical therapist, especially as much as I was going. And he told me later on, he said, man, Carey, that first day when you came in there, he said, you were so bad. He said, I sat there and thought, what am I going to do with her? I mean, you couldn't do anything. You couldn't bend. You couldn't move. You couldn't walk. I couldn't even sit on an exercise ball without falling over. That's how bad I was. And just taking those little steps and him setting goals for me, he knew exactly what my personality needed to keep striving, for that success.
Wow. Carey, let's go back. Not that I want to dwell on the accident itself here, but I think that there are some important things with regards to the accident that we should talk about. You've talked about the physical side of the accident. You've talked about how debilitating to a degree for some time that was, and it continues to be for you as well today. But what about the emotional side of it? What about the difficulty that you experienced emotionally? And I'm asking that because I want to ask you in a moment, maybe a follow-up on that, specific to forgiveness and acceptance.
You're trying to get to my feelings, aren't you?
I am trying to get to your feelings.
We're diving deep fast.
but the reason why that's important, I think, Carey, I see people, whether they're involved in an accident, whether they're part of, as Annette mentioned, maybe some kind of a disease or something else. There are ramifications, and they're not just physical. And sometimes we don't see the other parts that contribute to the way that we are and our ability to move forward from some of those situations.
So you mean Carey's a little bit like I am, and we can put a smile on, and
when you have a broken arm or a broken leg,
it's hard to hide it.
Yeah, you can see those, but on the inside, I know that there are a lot of people that really hurt. Talk to us about the emotional part of what happened to you and your two girls.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel every bit that the emotional part, the emotional pain was just as difficult to navigate as my physical pain, because it was all consuming. And I had worked in the medical field prior to this, and I took care of patients that were like me. And realistically, I knew that this could happen to me at any point in time, but you still just never think it's going to happen to you. I was a great driver. I did everything correct all the time. And you just don't think about, okay, well, it's not just you have to worry about. It's that other person who's crossing your path, and just like they say in the movies, it happens in a blink of an eye. And that is exactly how it happens. And afterwards, there is so much turmoil going on in your chest, and you have all of these questions, and there's no answers. There's no immediate answers. And the impaired driver that hit me, he passed away on impact. And I'm going to tell you that I know I didn't do anything wrong, but that weighed so heavily on my heart. And then, of course, I went with these questions of, well, why him and not me? What did I do to deserve to live? And he didn't. And I do have a big faith in God. And my next question was, okay, I know you didn't leave me here without a purpose. So what is my purpose? And it just consumed my mind. And I didn't understand what this other feeling was that I had. And I finally figured out it's called survivor's guilt. And when I started saying that out loud to a couple people, immediately I was like, I'm never talking about this again to anyone, because they were like, what do you mean you have survivor's guilt? You didn't do anything wrong. It's him. And it didn't make me feel any better when they were saying those things. I'm still like, somebody died, guys. Somebody lost life. And I'm still here, and I'm all jumbled up about that.
I understand that can be so painful. I've had experiences in my life where I felt so bad and I wanted to take on that it was my fault, even though I knew differently that it wasn't my fault. With regards to some abuse, I felt so bad. And it's that same kind of survivor's guilt that you play over and over. And logically, we know better. But inside here and inside our heart, it's so hard.
It is so hard. It feels different than what is realistic.
And here you are the caretaker of two children as well that went through a very traumatic experience. And so that must have just been a very, very difficult time for all of you, your entire family.
Oh, yes, it was incredibly difficult. And I have to say it was probably most difficult on my husband, because we have 4 children that are very close in age. And mom just is mom, she's the one that everybody goes to. And all of a sudden, they were coming to me, and I couldn't give them what they needed at that point, because one, physically I wasn't able to, but mentally, because of all the surgeries, anesthesia, and narcotics that I was on, I didn't remember everything that we had talked about. I wouldn't remember things from 2 hours before they had talked to me. And that was really difficult for all of us to understand. And that was a whole nother mom guilt. I mean, talk about how many different types of guilt a person can feel. That was another one on top of the list.
So hard. And so here's another layer. Your husband has to heal too.
Right.
Yes.
Because
Right.
even though it didn't physically happen to him in the accident, there's the layers that are going on that takes that healing and a different journey.
Yeah,
So-
he has his own journey, but he refuses to speak about it. He says, I didn't have anything to buffer my memory like you did. Oh, I felt it all, I saw it all, I remember it all, and I don't want to go back there.
So, Carey, one of our focuses at Care in the Load, actually 3 of our focuses, is when you look at a cairn, those rocks stuck on top of each other there, you'll recognize that each of those rocks has something in common, and that they support the rock underneath it. When you look at those rocks, we learned that there are 3 points of contact. There's the physical side. Or actually, when I say the 3 points of contact that they need in order to balance correctly, we've taken that 3 points of contact, and one of those points of contact is physical. We've talked about physical. Another is emotional. We've talked about emotional here as well. And you brought up the fact that your faith was very important to you, and that's our 3rd component. That's our 3rd point of contact with Care in the Load. Talk to us about your faith and why that was important to have that faith going through this experience.
It was more to me than I ever thought that it could be. I feel like I had a relationship with God before this. I talked to them or talked to him, and then we always talked to our kids about God, and we went to church and did everything. But I feel like because I was going so fast in my life at that point, that I had more of a superficial relationship with God. And I don't know why it took something like this to completely halt me and give up everything to him, but that's what it took. And I remember, like, a year before this happened, I kept asking God, I'm like, I need you to help me to figure out how to slow down. I need to slow down. I know I need to be paying more attention to these moments that are happening and that you're sending me to me, but I'm just having a hard time slowing down. And after this happened, I had a pretty good conversation with him. It was a little bit sarcastic. And I said, I don't think you really understood what I meant.
And we have a similar story as well in the fact, and we can smile about it, but it was very difficult at the time. We lost a 21-year-old son to the effects of a brain tumor. And while that happened 10 years ago, it's still very vivid in our minds, the experiences that we went through. But we look back at things now and we recognize that while we'd love to have our son back, the things that we've learned during the last 10 years have been invaluable. We wouldn't trade those experiences that we've learned for anything.
No, and I think when, Carey, you were talking about how it took this for you to really connect with God. I think when we realize we can't fix it, we can't. There's no way for you to have fixed on your own.
Yeah, I couldn't.
We couldn't. And so that faith, maybe as small as it was for me, and in whether, and where you were at, we had to nourish it and build that relationship with God. And that's why we are here. I really believe that's why you're there and here with us today on Care in the Load, is because you had to exercise that faith.
Yeah. And boy, he made me exercise it too.
Yeah. Cause it's not just given. We really have to work at it and exercise it. And there's those times that I feel like maybe, I'm not alone in this. I hope I'm not alone in this. I sometimes have pity parties and I can't allow it to last. I acknowledge it, and hopefully it's not, it's not longer than an hour, or a day at the most. But those times come. But it reminds me, and it helps me, takes me back to, okay.
Right. It's almost like keeping you humble in a sense is what I feel. Because I will get a little bit on my high horse every once in a while when I'm actually feeling good for a few days. And when I get knocked back, I'm like, okay, I hear you. You're bringing me back to you, because when I start to feel good for too many days in a row, I don't talk to you as much as I should. And I'm like, okay, I get it. It's
that balance again that we were talking about, the emotional, the physical, and the spiritual components there. And it seems like when we're off balance just with one of those, our life begins to tilt, and things don't go the way that we want them to go.
So, Carey, I just wonder this. For me, I had angels in my life that helped me to heal. They helped offer me strength. They helped lead me to God. They helped me, but they're very much a part of my life, seen and unseen angels in my life. And I couldn't have done it without them, without their love, without their encouragement and hope. And just recognizing that some had been through similar experiences, many had not, but they were there in a certain way to just offer that hope. Did you have angels in your life that helped you to to deal with this opportunity you had to become?
Yeah, you're hitting a really big feeling right now. I can feel my eyelashes starting to get wet. We had so many people support our family and consciously go out of their way to help us. And our family and close friends, especially, but we had our surrounding communities. They just banded together, and there were so many instances that as a community, they came together to show their support and just literally lift us up. And one of the very first experiences that we had was this. We went back to church, and it was too early for me to go to church. I think it was 4 months. It was Easter, but I was so ready to just get back, and I wasn't physically ready, but we went anyway. And it's one of the most touching stories that I have. And I was in a wheelchair, and the only place for us to sit was in the very first pew, and put the wheelchair over to the side. Well, when everybody came up for communion and they went around the side of my pew, I was on the very edge, and I felt this first hand on my shoulder, and I looked up, and it was, so-and-so, and I said, hi, thank you. And I was kind of emotional anyway about being there. So I had my head down, like just staring at my lap the whole time. And then I felt another hand, and I looked up and said, thank you. And I felt another one and another one and another one. And I guarantee you, every person who passed me put their hand on my shoulder and just gave it a squeeze. And at that point, I couldn't look up anymore. It was just a stream of tears. And I remember seeing the dots falling on my pants. It was so heavy. And I just thought at that time, like, these are angels on earth. I'm like, God sent me angels on earth because I'm having such a hard time right now. And he knew that I needed that one thing to like just keep pushing me on to say, I can get through this. I know I can get through this. And he just knew that day that's what I needed.
That's a special story, and it's a very touching story. And I would even go so far to say is that the hands on your shoulder were a culmination of the prayers that were said by those people throughout those 4 months previous. And we need angels in our lives. We need to be able to rely on the seen and the unseen. And I'm so grateful that you had that experience, because it really does help in our healing when we've got others that feel for us. I want to give you 2 words, not to change the subject at all here, but I think But I think that in light of your particular experience, these two words are very important. The first word is acceptance. The second word is forgiveness. Would you share with us what you feel when you think of those two words?
Yeah, that it's funny because I use those in my presentation. That I said there's two things that got me through my entire journey. And the first one was acceptance. There was nothing that I could do to stop what happened to me. That was someone else's choice that was then laid in my lap. So I have to accept that there's nothing that I can do about it. I had to accept where I was at that point, physically and emotionally, and where my future was going to go, that, hey, I may never walk again. Or if I do, it may not be great. But just the acceptance that I had to go through, it almost seemed like every few months, as I would heal and I would end up taking 2 steps back just to try to get 1 step forward again. It was a constant repetitive motion for me. And then my second word was definitely forgiveness, because, and it was around that same time, around 4 months after my car crash, that I wasn't angry with the man who did this, because I felt like he made the ultimate sacrifice for his decision that night. And unfortunately, that's the last decision he ever made, and he gave up his life for it. But I felt like for me to maybe have some peace with all that rumbling that was going around in my heart, that I just, instead of just holding it back, I just needed to say the words, I forgive you. And it was a very big moment. I was home alone. It was in the afternoon. And I was kind of like in that meditative state where I wasn't quite awake, but I wasn't really asleep either. And I felt this, just this feeling come over me. And it was the most peaceful feeling I'd ever felt in my entire life. And I remember smiling. And then all of a sudden, like, I panicked, like everything stopped. And I was like, he's here with me. The man who hit me is here. And he's telling me he's sorry. And that's exactly what I felt like. And I just burst out bawling. I was bawling all alone in my house. And then all of a sudden I am telling him, I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry that you lost your life. I don't know why you did. And I didn't. And I said, I forgive you. And it just whoosh, just kind of like went out of me. And after that, I totally had peace with him. Like, we were okay with each other at that point. So nobody else could frustrate that situation, because I knew we were on the same page.
Wow.
Carey, can you, taking that just a little bit further there, is it possible to forgive someone without excusing their actions?
100%. People get frustrated with me when I say that I granted forgiveness. They don't understand it. And that's what I tell them. I said, now, wait a minute. That doesn't mean that I excuse his actions. What he did was wrong, and he paid the price for it. That's not the same as granting forgiveness. Forgiveness is for me. I mean, because it brings me peace. And that's what I think a lot of people who have something tragic done to them, where they've lost something or someone, that they can't grant forgiveness because they feel like that is excusing them. And that's not the case at all.
Powerful. That's very powerful. One of the things that you talk about, and I think that sometimes when someone has gone through a horrendous experience, whatever that experience was, we refer to them as a survivor. But you've gone a step further, and you consider yourself a thriver. What's the difference between a survivor and a thriver?
I feel like being a survivor is just getting through the experience. Like, you're just trying to live day to day at that point. And there was a point where I was just a survivor, because that's all I could do, was just try to get through the day so that I could get to the next one, in hopes that things would be better. And after a certain point in time, it was more of a conscious decision of, hey, I'm not going to let this surviving thing own me anymore. Like, I don't want to just do as good as I can. I want to go beyond what I think I can do. And I want to thrive despite the situation that I am encompassing. And that's what I felt like, even though like every day is hard for me. I mean, there's not a day that I go, man, that's an easy day. But I feel like I am doing things, not even just physical things. I think it's a lot of mental, like my perception that makes me feel like I am thriving despite what I'm going through.
Yeah, that's such an important word for our listeners, is that word thrive.
And it's something that we've actually added in our bio. It's going from survival to thrival. And you're exactly right. Survive is sometimes all we can do, right? But we can thrive. And it doesn't mean the pain's gone.
Right.
It doesn't mean, but there's so much we can do when we can change our mindset, change our heart, and have that forgiveness and not be bitter. But how is this helping me to become? You've already shared a few things of this experience and how it's brought you closer to God. I think it's probably helped you in other ways as well in becoming a different woman than maybe you would have been or would be if you hadn't have had this experience.
Yeah, that, like you saying that makes me smile, because what Mark had said earlier about the lessons that you guys have learned during your experience, I've had so many people say, man, Carey, do you wish this never would have happened? And, on one hand, I'm like, well, yeah. I'm like, yeah, I would never want to go through this pain. This is awful. But having lived through it, I can't take it away, because I have grown into this person. I can't give her up. I just cannot, because I feel so beautiful inside now. And I wouldn't have become this person without having to be forced, basically, to go through these challenges and grow from them. And I like the way that I feel now. I mean, I feel so confident in who I am. And I don't know why I couldn't feel like this before, but it's almost like I hit my niche. Like, I'm finally here. I don't know why, again, it took me so long, or this experience, to do it, but I'm here.
So it's so interesting, because I'm trying to find the right word. We almost have to become broken.
Yeah.
To become more beautiful.
Yeah.
To have that light shine through those cracks of us that enhance us and help us to become that confident, beautiful me.
Yeah. And don't they say something like that, when you break something and you glue it back together, it's actually stronger than it was in the first place?
It is.
We actually have a course with Karen the Load called From Broken to Beautiful. And we focus on the fact that instead of just throwing something away that is broken, we mend it so that it's even stronger afterwards. And that is exactly what's happened with you as well. I go back to that word thrive, and I don't know why I'm thinking about it so much, but it's just such an important word. And I believe that there are many people out there that don't thrive and are missing that important component. I remember many years ago, and it always used to make fun of me, because one of the things I used to do is, when I'd get the morning newspaper, I'd look at the obituaries first to see if I knew anybody that had passed away. And I remember there was an obituary of a little baby. And it was a very sad experience. And it said that this baby passed away for failure to thrive. And I don't know why, out of the hundreds and probably thousands of obituaries I've read in my life, that one is probably the most meaningful, because it was important then for that little baby, which ultimately cost that baby its life. But how many of us fail to thrive when we're placed with difficulties in our life, whatever that difficulty might be? And all of us, say it might not be as pronounced as a major accident like you had, but all of us sometimes have to be, or faced with that decision Am I going to thrive, or am I just going to survive? So I think
it's
that's,
a choice.
yeah, it really is a choice,
Exactly.
isn't it?
It is. And it's a choice that doesn't mean it's easy. I think sometimes to survive, we're accustomed to it. It feels natural. We're
Right.
used to that.
It
And so
becomes
that
almost like your comfort zone.
it's in that comfort zone. And so when we choose to thrive, we choose to do the hard, the unfamiliar. It's scary sometimes.
Yeah, it makes you uncomfortable. And when people feel uncomfortable, they're like, whoa, whoa, I don't want to do that. I am comfortable even though I'm miserable. This is where I'm comfortable at. And if I have to actually push through all those feelings, that doesn't make me feel good. But that's what I try to get through to people is like, if you just keep working through the problem instead of trying to go around it, when you come out, like all of that heaviness that you feel, it goes away in some way. It's almost like the thing between forgiveness and excusing. It's almost like if you try to thrive instead of just survive, it's almost like you're not paying homage to what you're mourning, or, like if you have lost a person, it's almost like they're saying, well, if I actually start living again, it means I'm forgetting about them. But that's not, I know that's probably what it feels like in their heart, but that's not what's happening.
Right. And it is a grieving process. Whether we're grieving because our body's broken now, grieving because this person died or someone we love dies, or just grieving poor choices.
Yes.
There is a process that we need to acknowledge that.
There is. I mean, I truly felt like I went through the stages of grief as if someone had passed away. And I remember my priest actually said, he's like, well, someone did pass away, Carey. Your old self is not here anymore. And it kind of hit me. And I thought, you're right. It almost gave me permission to go ahead and just understand what I was going through, but then say, Carey, just let yourself go through all these stages so that you can get to that last stage. And hopefully, this heaviness will leave you at some point.
If we don't experience that rebirth a few times in our lives, we've missed some great opportunities.
I agree.
So let me just ask you this, because our listeners, and there's others out there wondering, will that heaviness leave if they go through it? Did it leave for you?
It was it was at a year. But just like they say with the regular grieving process of a loved one who's been lost, at a year, things started to lessen. And I knew 100%, I'm like, I'm going to make it. Like, this still hurts, but I'm going to make it. And it's not that, the pain of this experience ever leaves, but I could handle it at that point. I knew what it was. I could grieve for it. I could grieve through it, but I knew that I could handle it.
Exactly.
So Carey, a few days ago, you had something pretty exciting happen. And we want to share with our listeners what that is. I saw a video of you opening a box. And
yes.
let's talk about that. They're Facing Life Head On is the title of your book. Now, that had to be a little bit of a difficult title for your book, there, because it probably, I mean, it's obviously a play on what happened with regards to the accident there.
It
but
is,
tell us about your book.
Yeah, it's actually a friend of mine suggested that title because I had a different title and also a play on words. I was going to call it The Broken Road, and something just wasn't sitting well with me. I'm like, something's just missing. And she recommended it was something along the lines of Facing Life Head On. And I sat there and I thought, that's it. I'm like, that's exactly what my family and I did during this entire journey. Was we chose to face life head on instead of letting it just like hit us in the face. And writing that book, I only wrote about the first year of my recovery because honestly, I was so exhausted emotionally after that, I just couldn't get anything else out. I'm like, if I don't publish this now, I will never publish it, because it took me 10 years just to write that. It was so difficult, but it's a very emotional book. It's a short read, 130 pages, but I am telling you, from the first paragraph of the first chapter, man, I just go right at it. I mean, there is nothing held back in it. I decided to just puke it out and be vulnerable and tell people what it's really like on the other side.
Yeah. So we'll put this in our notes as well there, but the book again is called Facing Life Head On, and they can purchase it through Amazon, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much anywhere. I know it's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. If you want a signed copy, you can get it from my website, but if you want it really quick in those 2 days, just order from Amazon and it'll get you right there.
Awesome. So before we leave our conversation, and I think that we could probably go on for another hour, because we're really enjoying this dialogue here. But we always give our guests the last word there, and we've talked about a lot. We've talked about emotional resilience, physical resilience, spiritual resilience. We've talked about thriving versus just surviving. We've talked about a lot. Forgiveness. What are we missing? Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners as to your story and what you've learned that might be helpful for those that are dealing with their own internal struggles? Yeah,
I feel that if you will use the positive support system around you, and if you make a daily choice to have a positive attitude, I don't care what you're going through. It doesn't have to be anything remotely close to what I'm going through. I promise that if you do those two things, you will get through any challenge in your life, but you have to choose to use them both.
Excellent. Any thoughts on that?
A lot of thoughts going through my mind. I love that admonition of choosing, that it's a choice to go through it. Yeah. And I'm going to put you on on the spot here again. We talked a little bit about trail angels, and that being the title of our show. Is there a trail angel? I mean, you've shared that experience of the angels when you went back to church, but is there another specific experience or trail angel in your life that you could share with us the difference they made?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have another significant one is our kids were big into 4-H and showing their animals at our local fair. And I call them our fair family. And they did something similar that very first year that our kids showed their animals, I guess, 7 months after our car crash, that they came together and they all purchased my daughter's grand champion hog. I said it sounds so funny to say, but they ran the price up so high that it set a record, and they let us use it, for her for college, but then also for my medical expenses. And when I realized what was happening, I remember I looked to the right at the bleachers just full of people, and I couldn't see a single face because tears had just blurred my vision. And I remember looking at my husband, and I was basically looking at him for confirmation of what I thought what was happening. His eyes were brimming with tears, and he just kind of shook his head yes. And I thought, oh my God. I'm like, this is happening again. I'm like, I cannot believe this is happening again to our family. Like, we are so blessed with the most amazing people around us. And my pay it forward is like, it is so strong because I thought everybody needs to feel that. And I need to make sure that everything that was given to us, I need to be able to pass on to someone else.
That's beautiful. And we live in this world that we hear so much of the negative, the hatred, the messy stuff, but there is so much good. There is so much love.
Again, if you choose to see it.
If you choose to see it.
That's right.
So thank you for sharing, and thank you, because I know you're going to be, that you're a trail angel for others because of your willingness to be vulnerable. your willingness to share your story and to go out and to help others recognize that they can have joy. They can thrive in a
Thank you.
life that may be full of pain, but they still can thrive.
Yeah.
Carey, thank you for joining us today on Trail Angels, powered by Carrying the Load. We appreciate your wisdom. We appreciate you sharing some very personal stories. And that can sometimes be very difficult. But as a trail angel yourself, you have shown that there's more than just surviving. And that's what we're going to title our show today is Thriving versus Surviving. And I think that's very important as we've discussed so many different important aspects to healing. Each of us have a story to share. Author Brene Brown reminds us that owning our story is the bravest thing that we'll ever do. The stories and experiences that our guests share inspire us, as well as to help us to grow and connect with others. We invite you to become a part of Carrying the Load community through social media, as well as to share the site with those you know. We are stronger together. Keep caring.
Love it.